Hello, I'm Philip Jenks, and my appearance on the Morrisville-Eaton Central School Wall of Fame will come as a surprise to most of my contemporaries in the class of 1964. I was not an exceptional student. With this disclosure, I hasten to add that fate could not have picked a better place to grow up than Morrisville, New York. Most of my memories of the 50s and 60s, surprisingly, involve snow. Here, my dad, Elmore Jenks, and I have broken out of our garage on Cedar Street to assess the chances of digging out before May. Dad was always willing to modernize his approach to snow removal, and this picture of him, snowblower in hand, pipe clenched in teeth, is one of my most enduring memories of growing up. We did have summer in Morrisville in the 50s. Here, my mother Mary is holding Paul, my brother, erect. Brother Larry, on the left, is reaching for a piece of birthday cake, while Brother Jim is gazing thoughtfully at some phantasm off the left-hand side of the screen. Like many Morrisvillians, my siblings and I were raised to be peaceful and non-competitive. We were also encouraged to be studious and intellectually curious. By the time my sister Susan came along, we had evolved into a family of individualists who defied the fashion standards of our times. For all of us, the most influential institution in our lives was Morrisville-Eaton Central School. For me and other denizens of the 60s, this was the high school we remember best. Now the Edward Andrews Elementary School. Members of my generation remember every nook and cranny of this building, the, you should pardon the expression, hallowed halls, the classrooms, the upstairs library, the gymnasium, which also served as a cafeteria, assembly hall, and provided the stage for dramas and orchestra and band recitals. It's been more than half a century since these faculty members gathered for this yearbook portrait in 1963. Many of these wonderful mentors are gone now, but they made an indelible impression on all of us students. Most of them could have worked in larger, more prestigious halls of learning, but they chose to settle in the bucolic climes of Morrisville-Eaton. I am sure all graduates of my era will affirm my tributes to each of them, because most of us would have had many fewer chances of success in life without them. In my era, we knew Raymond Banks, first as our 9th grade biology teacher and finally as the principal of the school. Ray was a genial and kindly man who enjoyed laughing even if the joke was on him. When I was in high school, Ray and my dad, Elmore Jenks, were good friends, and they would shout down the hallway at each other in perfectly constructed Yogi Bear voices. I would pretend I didn't know either one of them. Dan Nichols' name is dropped by most of the students who knew him as an exceptionally inspiring mentor. As senior high English teacher, he inspired in me a love of writing and literature. I was in Dan's homeroom on the day President Kennedy was killed in 1963, and I can still see him standing by his desk, surrounded by incredulous students as he repeated the unbelievable over and over again. Yes, he's dead. He was assassinated. No, he's gone. He was assassinated. Across the hall was the high school library, and librarian Janet Drake kept coming into the room to share the grief, to pass along rumors that didn't make us feel any better. Johnson has had a heart attack. The Russians may be attacking. But Mother Drake, never willing to leave us feeling uncomfortable, would always reassure us when she left the room. But we're going to be okay. I must give due honor to two wonderful teachers who were never able to give me a passing grade. Beryl Ruckert was the high school math teacher, and I rarely understood a thing she said in class. She did manage to teach me how to use a slide rule, though I haven't seen one around in decades. Mrs. Ruckert was also an industrious farmer whose apple cider was a highlight of each fall. She always treated me and everyone else with affection and respect. You did not have to earn A's for her to like you, which was good news for me. Otherwise, I might never have gotten to know this wonderful woman for the compassionate teacher that she was. Donald Pete Palmer was never able to give me a passing grade in chemistry or physics, which of course was not his fault. A good Baptist, Pete barely tolerated it when I made dandelion wine for my senior chemistry project. He did teach me, among other things, that if you don't work hard in life, failure may be an inevitable part of your experience. John Gorley and Reg Dodge were good friends of my dad, and each was like a surrogate father to me. John lived 2 houses down from us on Cedar Street, and one summer, John and Dad took my brother Larry and me, and John's sons, Tommy and John, to New York City for a Yankees game. They must have been out of their minds. I remember trying to check into the Roosevelt Hotel and watching Dad and John recoil at the exorbitant cost of a room. We marched out in indignant protest, turned the corner, and strode unknowingly into the side entrance of the Roosevelt Hotel and got a room. Reg Dodge loved history, and he taught me to love it too. John, Reg, and my dad were all war veterans, and when they retired, the principal told the students, "Now you'll have to learn about World War II from books." Dad, shown here with our neighbor, Tommy Gorley, taught office practice and business at the school. The fact that he was a teacher on a small faculty meant every other teacher seemed like a member of the family. It also meant I didn't have to wait until report cards were passed out to know how I was doing. Dad taught us how to use a lot of things that are as obsolete as slide rules, typewriters, stenograph recorders, mimeograph machines, ditto machines, and more. He also taught shorthand, which remains a marketable skill for the time being. When I asked Dad to sign my high school yearbook, he scrawled across this picture, "This has been a rough 17 years for both of us." But he was by far the most devoted and most significant of all my mentors at Morrisville-Eaton Central School. I knew, of course, that Dad was a veteran, but he rarely talked about it, and I didn't realize what that meant until I found a copy of his diary. He participated in the Buna campaign in Papua New Guinea, which was one of the bloodiest battles of the war. I've published his diary at bunadiary.com. It was clearly a horrendous experience for Dad. The stricken expression on his face as he displayed a deer he just shot says it all. As a new faculty member, Dad felt he could not turn down an invitation from Principal Ed Andrews to go deer hunting. Naturally, after 3 years of combat practice, Dad was the best shot, but the expression on his face belies something more serious than a hunter's joy. It belies post-traumatic stress syndrome. Dad had an abhorrence of war all his life, and he passed it on to his sons and daughter. Any memoir of my Morrisville years would have to include some great mentors who are not on the faculty. Doc Matthias, the local physician, made house calls, inoculated us against dread diseases like smallpox and polio, and was ever available to us when we needed health advice. For example, he warned us all not to smoke, which was advice that I didn't follow until I was well into my college years. Jack Irwin was my pastor throughout high school, and he was among the most patient of my teachers. He was also a genial and gentle spirit whose World War II experiences as a teenage tank gunner in Europe were not unveiled until he wrote this dramatic and sometimes bloody memoir in 2003. Walt Ketchum was my pastor during my senior year. Walt was also a patient and gentle intellectual, who encouraged me to read Dietrich Bonhoeffer's The Cost of Discipleship. That book was one of the most transforming experiences of my high school career. Both pastors were instrumental in preparing me for a life in the church, not as a pastor, but as a journalist, and I am grateful for their tutelage. There are so many others in the faculty who had an enormous influence on me. I have to mention Don Miller, Grant Bowman, and Jane Kassler, whose art classes I will never forget. I offer my thanks to them all. They were, individually and collectively, unique mentors who chose to spend a portion of their professional careers in the Morrisville-Eaton Central School District. They changed many lives and hearts, including mine, forever, and I am forever in their debt.